white livery pushed past her and fell to his knees before Ran, while she stared in amazement. My Lord Dragon! The fellow burst out in a breathless squeak. Ogier have come to the palace. 3 of them! They have been given wine and offered more, but they insist only on seeing the Lord Dragon. Rand made his voice easy. He did not want to frighten the man. How long have you been in the palace? The fellow's livery coat fit him, and he was not young. I'm afraid I don't know your name. The kneeling man goggled. My name? Barry, my Lord Dragon. 22 years, my Lord Dragon. Come winter night. My Lord Dragon, the Ogier? Rand had visited an Ogier steading twice, but he was not sure of the proper etiquette. Ogier had built most of the great cities, the oldest parts of them, and still came out of their steading occasionally to make repairs. He doubted Barry would have been this excited for anyone else, less than King or Aes Sedai. Maybe not for them. Rand stuffed pipe and tobacco pouch back into his pocket. Take me to them. Barry leapt to his feet, Open bouncing on his toes. Rand suspected he had made the right choice. The man showed no surprise that the Lord Dragon was going to be Ogier instead of Alexander.
Hey, Fire, how you doing?
He left his sword.
I hope you're doing well.
Ogier would not be impressed by either.
Give me 1 second,
Fire
everyone.
Cassidy came, of course.
I gotta get up real quick.
Barry would have run back.
Actually, have it change around a little bit.
Keeping his face to Rand. The Ogier waited in the courtyard with a fountain, basin filled with lily pads and red and gold fish. A white-haired man in a long coat that flared above high boots with their tops turned down, and 2 women, one noticeably much younger than the other, their skirts embroidered in vines and leaves, the elders considerably more elaborate than the youngers. Golden goblets made for humans seemed tiny in their hands. Several trees retained some of their leaves, and the palace itself gave shade. The Ogier were not alone. Randapir, Zulin, and a good 3 dozen maidens were crowded around them. And Urien plus 50 more Aiel.
Yeah, Fire. Not doing too bad.
Saw Rand. The Ogier man said,
Your name sings in my ears, Randolph Thor.
in a voice like rumbling thunder, and gravely made introductions. He
There we
was
go.
Hammond, son of Dal, son of Morn. The older woman was Cobria, daughter of Ella, daughter of Sun. And the younger was Aerith, daughter of Iva, daughter of Alar. Rand remembered seeing Aerith once in Steading Sofa.
Well, it's not going too bad, Fire. Hope it's going good for you.
He could not imagine what she was doing in Cape. The Ogier made the Aiel seem small. They made the courtyard seem small.
Hell yeah.
For half again as tall as Rand, broad in proportion. Cobria, less than shorter than that. Topped Rand by nearly a foot and a half. Yet that was the smallest difference between Ogier and humans. Hammond's eyes were as large and round as teacups. His broad nose nearly
Hell
covered
yeah.
his face, and his ears stood up through his hair, tipped with white tongues. He wore long drooping white mustaches and a narrow beard beneath his chin, and his eyebrows hung down to his cheeks. Rand could not have said precisely how Cobriel's and Aerith's faces differed, except for lacking beards and mustaches, of course, and their eyebrows were not quite so long or thick, but they seemed somehow more delicate. Though Cobriel's was quite stern at the moment, she looked familiar too for some reason, and Aerith appeared worried, her ears sagging. If you will forgive me a moment, Rand told them. Zulin did not let him get another word out. We came to talk with the Tree Brothers, Randall Thor, she said firmly. You must know the Aiel have long been water friends to the Tree Brothers. We go to trade in their steading often.
That is quite true.
Hammond murmured. For an Ogier, it was a murmur. An avalanche somewhere out of sight. I am sure the others did come to talk, Rand told Zulin. He could pick out the members of her guard this morning by eye, every last one of them. Jelani blushed a deep red. On the other hand, aside from Urien, no more than 3 or 4 of the morning's red shields were there. I would not like to think I need to ask Anila and Sumara to take you in charge. Sulan's tanned face darkened with indignation, making the scar she had taken following him stand out more. I would talk with them alone. Alone, he emphasized, eyeing Elia and Cassin. Unless you think I need protection from them. If anything, that made her more offended, when she gathered up the maidens with quick flashes of hand talk, and what for anyone but an Aiel would surely have been called a huff. Some of the Aiel men were chuckling as they laughed. Rand supposed he had made a joke of some kind. As they went, Hammond stroked his long beard.
Humans have not always thought of us so safe, though.
His musing sounded like a huge bumblebee.
It is in the old records, very old. Only fragments, really, but dating from just after. Elder Harmon,
Corporeal said politely.
if we may stick to the matter at hand.
This bumblebee rumbled at a higher pitch. Elder Hammond. Where had Rand heard that before? Each steading had its council of elders. Hammond sighed deeply.
Very well, Corporal. But you are showing unseemly haste. You barely gave us time to wash before coming here. I vow you've begun to leap about like...
Those big eyes flickered toward Rand, and he covered a cough with a hand the size of a large ham. Ogier considered humans hasty, always tried to do now what could not possibly matter until tomorrow. Or until next year. Ogier took a very long view. They also thought it insulting to remind humans of how they leaped about.
This has been a most exacting journey outside.
Hammond went on, explaining to Rand.
Not the least of it discovering that the Shaidu Aiel had besieged Al-Khair Ra'in Alan. Most extraordinary, that. And that you were actually there. But then you left before we could speak with you. And I cannot help feeling we have been impetuous. No. No, you speak, Corporal. It is for you I left my studies and my teaching to go running across the world. My classes will be in riot by now.
Rand almost grinned. The way Ogier normally did things, Hammond's classes would take half a year to decide he really was gone, and a year more to discuss what to do about it.
A mother has some right to be...
Oh, yeah,
anxious,
fire. Cheers.
Said, tufted ears quivering. She seemed to be battling between the respect due an elder and a most un-Ogier-like impatience. When she turned around, she drew herself up, ears standing straight and chin firm.
What have you done with my son?
Rand gaped. Your son?
Loyal.
She stared as if he were mad. Aerith was peering at him anxiously, hands clutched to her breast.
You told the eldest of the elders of Stepping Tsofu that you would look after him.
Corporeal marched on.
1 second, everyone. I'll be
They
right
told
back.
me you did. You did not call yourself Dragon then, but it was you. Wasn't it, Aerith? Did Ayla not say Rand or four?
She did not give the younger woman time for more than an hour. As her voice picked up speed, Hammond began to look pained.
My loyal is too young to be outside, too young to be running across the world, doing the things you no doubt have him doing. Elder Ayla told me about you. What has my royal to do with the waves and tribes and the Horn Valir? You will hand him over to me now, please, so I can see him properly married to Aerith. She will settle his itchy feet. He's very handsome.
Aerith murmured shyly, her ears quivering so hard with embarrassment that the dark tongues blurred.
And I think he's very brilliant, too.
It took Rand a moment to regain his balance mentally. An Ogier being firm sounded much the same as a mountain falling. An Ogier being firm and speaking rapidly. By Ogier lights, Loyal was too young to have left the steading alone. Little more than 90. Ogier were very long-lived. From the first day Rand had met him, all full of eagerness to see the world, Loyal had been worried over what would happen when the elders realized he had run away. Most of all, he worried about his mother coming after him with a bride in tow. He said the man had no say in these things among Ogier, and the woman not much. It was all the two mothers doing. It was not beyond possibility to find yourself betrothed to a woman you had never met before the day your mother introduced you to your prospective bride and mother-in-law. Loyal seemed to think marriage would be the end of everything for him, certainly to all his wishes to see the world. And whether it would or not, Rand could not hand a friend over to what he feared. He was about to say he did not know where Loyal was, and suggest they return to the steading until he came back. He had his mouth open to say it, when a question occurred to him. It embarrassed him that he could not remember something so important. To Loyal it was. How long has he been out the steading?
Too long.
Hammond grumbled like boulders rolling downhill.
The boy never wanted to apply himself, always talking about seeing outside, as if anything has really changed from what's in the books he should have been studying. What real change is it if humans change the lines on a map? The land is still. He has been outside much too long.
Loyal's mother put in as firmly as a post driven into dry clay. Hammond frowned at her, and she managed to stare back at him just as firmly, although her ears vibrated in embarrassment.
More than 5 years now,
Aerith said. For a moment, her ears wilted, then shot up stubbornly back. In a very good imitation of Cochran, she said,
I want him to be my husband. I knew that when I first saw him. I will not let him die. Not from being foolish.
Rand and Loyal had talked of many things, and one of them had been the longing, although Loyal had not liked talking about it. When the breaking of the world drove humans to flee for whatever safety they could find, it drove Ogier from the steading too. For long years, humans had wandered in a world that changed sometimes by the day, hunting that safety. And Ogier had wandered, hunting for the steading lost in the changing land. It was then that the longing entered them. And Ogier away from the steading wanted to return. And Ogier long from the steading needed to return. And Ogier too long from the steading died. He told me of an Ogier who stayed out longer, Rand said quietly. 10 years, I think he said. Hammond was shaking his massive head before Rand finished.
It will not do. That I know of, 5 have remained outside that long and survived to return, and I think I would know if more had. Such madness would be written about and talked about. 3 of those died within a year of coming home. The 4th was an invalid for the rest of his life, and the 5th little better, needing a stick to walk. Though she did continue writing. Dalva had some interesting things to say concerning.
This time when Gabrielle opened her mouth, his head whipped around. He stared at her, long eyebrows pumping up, and she began smoothing her skirts furiously. But she stared right back.
5 years is a short time, I know,
Hammond told Rand, while watching Gabrielle sharply from the corner of his eye.
But we are tied to the steading now. We heard nothing in the city to indicate that Loyal is here, and from the excitement we ourselves caused, I think we would have. But if you will tell us where he is, you will be doing him a very great kindness.
The 2 rivers, Rand said. Saving a friend's life was not betraying. When I last saw him, he was setting out in good company, with friends. It's a quiet place, the 2 rivers. Safe. It was now, again, thanks to Perrin. And he was, well, a few months ago. Bode had said as much when the girls were telling what had happened back home.
The 2 rivers,
Hammond muttered.
Yes, I know what that is. Another long walk.
Ogier seldom rode, there being few horses that could bear them, and they preferred their own feet in any case.
We must start out immediately,
Aerith said in a firm, yet light ruffle. Light compared to Hammond. Gabriel and Hammond looked at her in surprise, and her ears wilted completely. She was, after all, a very young woman, accompanying an elder, and the woman Rand suspected was of some importance in her own right from the way she stood up to him. Aerith was probably not a day over 80. Smiling at the thought, a slip of a girl, maybe only 70. Rand said, "Please accept the hospitality of the palace. A few days' rest might even make your journey faster, and you might be able to help me, Elder Hammond." Of course. Loyal was always talking about his teacher, Elder Hammond. Elder Hammond knew everything, according to Loyal. "I need to locate the way gates. All of them." All three Ogier spoke at once.
Waygates.
Hammond said, ears and eyebrows both shooting up.
The ways are very dangerous. Far too
No,
dangerous.
no plans.
Aerith protested.
My loyal could be.
Do you have any plans for your weekend, Fire?
A few days.
Gabriel said on top of her.
My loyal could be.
She cut off, staring at the younger woman, lips compressed and ears quivering. Hammond frowned at them both, stroking his narrow beard irritably.
I do not know why I let myself be talked into this. I should be teaching my classes and speaking to the stump. If you are not such a respectable...
One second.
You mean if you are not married to my sister?
She said stoutly.
O'Neill told you to do your duty, Hammond.
Hammond's brows lowered till the long ends hung on his cheeks, and her ears seemed to lose most of their stiffness.
I meant to say she asked you,
she went on. Not hurriedly,
No shit.
not losing aplomb, but definitely not hesitating.
By the tree and stillness I met no offense, Elder
Hammond harumphed loudly, which for an Ogier meant very loudly, and turned to Rand, tugging his coat as if it had been disarrayed. Shadow Spawn are using the ways, Rand said before Hammond could speak. I have to set guards on the few I can reach, including the one outside Steading Sofu, plainly after their departure. These three could not have walked all the way from Steading Sofu after his last futile visit. A bare handful. All of them need to be guarded, or else Myrddraal and Trollocs can come boarding out of nowhere, as far as anybody they catch is concerned. But I don't even know where they all are. That would still leave gateways, of course. Sometimes you wondered why one of the Forsaken did not pour a few thousand Trollocs into the palace by a gateway. Point. It would be a slaughter at last. A gateway unless he was there. He could do something about the way gates. Hammond exchanged looks with Company. They drew aside, speaking in a whisper. And for a wonder, it was low enough that all he heard was a buzz like a huge swarm of bees on the roof. You must be right about her having some importance. A speaker with a capital S. He had heard the captain. He considered seizing Saidin. He would be able to hear then, and rejected it disgustedly. He had not sunk to eavesdropping yet. Aerith divided her attention evenly between her elders and Rand, all the while unconsciously smoothing her skirts. Rand hoped they did not inquire why he had not asked his question of the Council of Elders in Steading Sofu. Alar, eldest of the elders there, had been very firm. The stump was meeting, and nothing so odd, so peculiar as to never have been thought of before, as handing control of the way gates to a human could be done unless the stump concurred. Who he was hardly seemed to matter to her, any more than it did to these three. Finally, Hammond came back, frowning, and gripping the lapels of his coat. Gabriel was frowning too.
This is all very hasty, very hasty,
Hammond said in slow tones like gravel sliding.
I wish I could discuss it with... Well, I cannot. Shadow Spawn, you say? Very well. If there must be haste, there must be haste. Never let it be said that Ogier cannot move quickly when needs require. And perhaps they do now. You must understand the Council of Elders in any steading may tell you no, and so may the stump.
Maps! Rand shouted, so loudly that all three Ogier jumped. I need maps! He spun around, looking for one of the servants who always seemed to be about. For a Gaishan, anyone. Sulin put her head into the courtyard through a doorway. She would be nearby, after everything he had told her. Maps, he barked at her. I want every map in the palace. And a pen and ink. Now! Quickly! She looked at him almost disparagingly. Aiel did not use maps. Indeed, claimed not to need them, and turned away. Run, Farder Eyes My, he snapped. She looked over her shoulder at him, and ran. He wished he knew how his face looked, so he could recall it for use again. Hammond appeared as though he would be wringing his hands if his dignity had been just a little smaller.
Really, there is very little we can possibly tell you that you don't already know. Every steading has one just outside.
The first waygates could not have been made inside, with the ability to channel blocked by the steading itself. Even when Ogier were given the talisman of growing, and could themselves make the ways grow to a new waygate, the power was still involved, if not channeling.
And all your cities that have Ogier groves, though it does seem the city here has grown over the grove. And in Alcair, Ra'in Alam.
He trailed off, shaking his head. The trouble could be summed up by that name. 3,000 years ago, near enough, there had been a city called Alcair, Ra'in Alam, built by Ogier. Today it was Kyrian, and the grove the Ogier builders planted to remind them of their steading was part of an estate that had belonged to the same Barthanes, whose palace now housed Rand's school. Nobody but Ogier and maybe some Aes Sedai remembered Alcair, Ra'in Alam,
that tears fire.
not even Kyrienin. Whatever Hammond believed, much could change in 3,000 years. Great Ogier-built cities had ceased to exist, some leaving not so much as a name behind. Great cities had risen that the Ogier had had no hand in. Amador, begun after the Trolloc Wars, was one. So and Chachin in Kandor, and Shol Arbella in Arafel, and Falmarin in Shinar. In Aradaman, Bandor Eban had been built on the ruins of a city destroyed in the War of the 100 Years, a city Moraine knew 3 names for, each suspect, and itself built on the ruins of a nameless city that had vanished in the Trolloc Wars. Rand knew of a waygate in Shinar, in the countryside near a moderate town that had kept part of the name of the huge city leveled by Trollocs, and another inside the Blight in shadow-murdered Malkir. Other places, there had simply been change or growth, as Hammond himself had pointed out. The waygate here in Camelin sat in a basement now, a well-guarded basement. Rand knew there was a waygate in Tyr, out in the great pasture land where the High Lords ran their famous horse herds. There should be one somewhere in the Mountains of Mist, where Manetheren had once stood, wherever that was. As far as steading went, he knew where to find steading Tsofu. Moraine had not considered steading or Ogier a vital part of his education.
You don't know where the steading are?
Hammond said incredulously when Rand finished explaining.
Is this Aiel humor? I have never understood Aiel humor.
For Ogier, Rand said gently, it has been a long time since the ways were made. For humans, it has been a very long time.
But you do not even remember Mafalda Daranel, or Ankohima, or Londaran Kor, or...
Coperiel put a hand on Hammond's shoulder, but the pity in her eyes was directed at Rand.
He does not remember,
She said softly.
their memories are gone.
She made it sound the greatest loss imaginable. Aerith, hands clasped to her mouth, appeared ready to cry. Sulin returned, quite deliberately not drunken, followed by a fat cluster of Gaishan, their arms filled to overflowing with rolled maps of all sizes, some long enough to drag on the courtyard paving stones. One white-robed man carried an ivory inlaid writing box. "I have sent Gaishan looking for more," she said stiffly, "and some of the wetlanders." "Thank you," he told her. A little of the tautness went from her face. Squatting down, he began spreading maps right there on the paving stones, sorting them. A number were of the city, and many of parts of Andor. He quickly found one showing the whole stretch of the borderlands, and the light knew what that was doing in Camelin. Some were old and tattered, showing borders that no longer applied, naming countries that had faded away hundreds of years before. Borders and names were enough to rank the maps by age. The oldest, Ardan, bordered Cairhien to the north, then Ardan was gone, and Cairhien's borders swept halfway to Shinar.
Hey, Grandpa, how you doing?
Became clear the Sun Throne
Hell yeah, I appreciate it.
Moredo stood between Tyr and Ilion, then Moredo was gone, and Tyr and Ilion's borders met on the plains of Moredo, slowly falling back for the same reasons as Cairhien's. Carlane vanished, and Almuth, Nosara, and Irindel, and others, sometimes absorbed by other nations, most often eventually becoming unclaimed land and wilderness. Those maps told a story of fading since Hoffling's empire crumbled, of humanity in slow retreat. A second borderland map showed only Saldea.
You fell asleep?
and
Oh, yeah.
But it showed
now you'll be awake all night.
farther north, too. Humanity retreated, and the shadow advanced. A bald, skinny man in ill-fitting palace livery scurried into the courtyard with another armload and ran aside and went on selecting and discarding. Hammond gravely examined the writing box that was held out to him by the Gaishan and produced one almost as large, though quite plain, to make a capacious coat pocket. The pen he took from it was polished wood, rather fatter than Rand's thumb, and long enough to look slender. It fit the Ogier's sausage-thick fingers perfectly. He got down on hands and knees, crawling among the maps as Rand sorted, occasionally dipping his pen in the Gaishan's inkpot, annotating in a handwriting that seemed too large until he realized that for him it was very small. Gabriel followed, peering over his shoulder, even after he asked the second time whether she really thought he would make a mistake. It was an education for Rand, beginning with 7 steadings scattered through the borderlands. But then Trollocs feared to enter a steading, and even Myrddraal needed some great purpose to drive them into one. The spine of the world, the Dragon Wall, held 13, including one in Kinslayer's Dagger, from steading Shangtai in the south to steading Kitchen, and steading Sanshan in the north, only a few miles apart.
The land truly changed in the breaking of the world.
No shit.
Someone explained when Rand commented.
Yeah, that'll you should
He
do it,
continued
Grandpa.
talking briskly, though.
Especially if you ate a good meal.
Dry land.
Sitting there nice and full,
sea,
then
dry land
watching something good, then
The land
next thing you know,
as well.
you're out.
Sometimes what was far apart became close together, and what was close far. Though of course no one can say whether Kitchen and Sanshan were far apart at all. You forgot Kamton,
Gabriel announced, making another liveried servant drop his fresh armload of maps with a start. Hammond gave her a look and lettered in the name just above the river Irelel, not far north of Hadden Myr. In the strip west of the Dragon Wall, from the southern border of Shinar to the Sea of Storms, there were only 4, all newfound, as the Ogier considered it, meaning the youngest. Sofu had had Ogier back for 6,000 years, none of the others for more than 1,000. Some of the locations
You're awake.
were as big a surprise as the
You're awake now, and you'll be awake for a little bit.
Mountains of Mist, which had 6, and the Shadow Coast. The Black Hills were included, and the forests above the river Ivo, and the mountains above the river Dagon, just north of Arad-Daman. Sadr was the list of steading abandoned, given up because the numbers there had grown too few. The Spine of the World and the Mountains of Mist and the Shadow Coast were in that list too. And so was a steading deep on Almuth Plain, near the great forest called the Parish Swar, and one in the low mountains along the north of Tumon Head, facing the Arth Ocean. Perhaps the
Yeah,
saddest
definitely
of
be
one
more
marked on
game
the very
time.
edge of the Blight in Arthur. Myrddraal might be reluctant to enter a steading, but as the Blight marched south year by year, it swept over everything. Pausing, Hammond said sadly,
Sheraldu was swallowed by the Great Blight 1,843 years ago, and Chandar 968. May their memories flourish and flower in the light.
Elfril and Aerith murmured together. I know of one you didn't mark, Rand said. Baron had told him of sheltering in it once. He pulled out a map of Andor, east of the river Aranel, and touched a spot well above the road from Caemlyn to Whitebridge. It was close enough. Hammond almost a snarl.
Where Hawkwing City was to be, that was never reclaimed. Several steading were found and never reclaimed. We try to stay away from the lands of men.
I'm listening to a book I've been listening to for a little bit. Well, a series. It's called Lord of Chaos. Well, it's an audio book for my Audible account.
This would be a fine discussion another time,
Cobra said, directing her words to Rand, yet plainly meaning them for Hammond, as her sidelong looks indicated.
But it's I got a list of them.
Hammond sighed heavily. Surely you'll stay here a while, Rand protested. You must be exhausted, walking all the way from Kyrian.
Women do not become.
I think I got with my Audible account for how long I've had it. I got 115 titles, so pretty much 115 books.
Muttering to himself, Hammond went on with his listing.
But the one we're listening to is Lord of Chaos, but it's
each grove holding its way gate to carry Ogier back and forth to the
book 6 in the series.
Troubled lands of men. Caemlyn he marked, of course, and Tarvala, Tyr, Ilion, Kyrian, and Maradon, and Abu Dar. That was the end, as far as cities that still existed were concerned. Abu Dar, he wrote, was Barashta. Perhaps Barashta belonged with the others in a way, with the dots made in places where the map showed nothing but a village, if that. Bafal de Daranel, and Kohima, and Londaran Kor, of course, and Manetheren. Aren Mador, Arenol, Shema, Darenbach, Brain, Rondaris, Ayakorama, Aimon. As that list grew, Rand began to see damp spots on each map when Hammond was done. It took him a moment to realize that the Ogier elder was weeping silently, letting the tears fall as he marked cities dead and forgotten. Perhaps he wept for the people, perhaps for the memories. The one thing Rand could be sure of was that it was not for the cities themselves, not for the lost works of Ogier masons. To the Ogier, stonework was only something they had picked up during the exile, and what work in stone could compare with the majesty of trees? One of those names more than tugged at Rand's memories, and its location as well.
Oh yeah, Grandpa, you have a good night too.
7 days above Whitebridge on the Aranel.
See you tomorrow.
There was a grove here, he said, fingering the mark.
At Arenhall?
Hammond said.
Yes. Yes, there was. A sad business, that.
Rand did not raise his head.
Oh yeah.
In Shadow Logoth, he corrected. A very sad business. Would you show me that way gate if I took you there? Chapter 21. The Shadow Logoth.
Take us there?
Cobbrel said, frowning formidably at the map in Rand's hands.
It will carry us well out of our way, if I remember where the 2 rivers is correctly. I will not waste another day finding Loyal.
Aerith nodded firmly. Hammond, cheeks still damp with tears, shook his head for their haste, but said,
I cannot allow it. Arenhall, Shadar Logoth, as you rightly name it now, is no place for someone as young as Aerith. In good truth, it is no place for anyone.
The Letting the map fall, Rand stood up. He knew Shadar Logoth better than he wanted to. You will lose no time. In fact, you'll gain. I will take you there by traveling, by a gateway. You'll be most of the way to the Two Rivers today. Will not be long. I know you can lead me right to the Waygate. Ogier could sense Waygates, if they were not too far. This necessitated another conference beyond the fountain, one Aerith demanded to be part of. Rand caught only snatches, yet it was plain that Hammond, shaking his great head doggedly, opposed the plan, while Covril, ears so stiff it seemed she was trying for every inch of height, insisted on it. At first, Covril frowned at Aerith as much as at Hammond. Whatever the relationship between mother-in-law and daughter-in-law among Ogier, she clearly thought the younger woman had no business in this. It did not take her long to change her mind, though. The Ogier women flanked Hammond, hammering at him relentlessly.
Too dangerous, much too dangerous.
Came like distant thunder from Hammond.
Almost there today.
A slighter thunder from Covril.
1 second, everyone.
Ridiculous
There we go.
gallivanting be done with, so I can return to my class.
Just had to send a message real quick. It didn't feel like typing, so
There is much to be
I
said
talked to it and had to type it.
before the stump.
Rand did not care whether Hammond told the stump he was a bully. Ogier held themselves apart from men except for repairing their own stonework, and it was unlikely they would influence any human one way or another about him. Good, he said. I will send someone to fetch your belongings from your inn.
We have everything right here.
Pablo went back around to the other side of the fountain, with 2 bundles.
That was a good one there.
If Royal were here,
Aerith explained, donning her bundle.
he would to stop back to study Tsofu without delay. If not, he would be ready to go on. Actually, it was the beds.
Hammond confided, folding his hands to indicate a size to fit a human child.
Once every inn outside had 2 or 3 Ogier rooms, but they seem very hard to find now. It is difficult to understand.
He glanced at the marked maps and sighed.
It was difficult to understand.
Waiting just long enough for Hammond to fetch his own bundle, Rand seized Saidin and opened a gateway right there beside the fountain. A hole in the air that showed a ruined, weed-filled street and collapsing buildings. Randall Thor! Suolin almost strolled into the courtyard, just ahead of a cluster of map-laden servants and Guy Shine. Laya and Casson were with her, pretending to be just as casual. You asked for more maps. Sulin's glance at the gateway was barely short of accusing. I can protect myself better there than you can, Rand told her coldly. He did not intend it to be cold, but wrapped in the void, he could not make his voice anything but cold and distant. There is nothing your spears can fight, and some things they can't. Suolin still wore a good deal of her earlier stiffness. All the more reason for us to be there. That could not possibly make sense to anyone, not Aiel, but I will not argue it, he said. She would try to follow if he refused. She would summon maidens who would try to leap through, even if he was closing the gateway. I expect you have the rest of today's guard just inside. Whistle them up. But everyone is to stay close to me and touch nothing. Be quick about it. I want this done with. His memories of Shadar Logoth were not pleasant. I sent them away as you insisted, Suolin said disgustedly. Give me a slow count of 100. 10. 50. Rand nodded, and her fingers flashed. Jelani darted away inside, and Sulan's hands flickered again. 3 Guy Scheinerman dropped their armloads of maps, looking startled. Aiel never looked that surprised. Gathered long white robes and vanished back into the palace in different directions. But quickly as they moved, Sulan was ahead of them. As Rand reached 20, Aiel began bounding into the courtyard, hurtling through windows, leaping down from balconies. He almost lost the count. Everyone was veiled, and only some maidens. They stared about in confusion when they found only Rand and 3 Ogier, blinked at them curiously. Some lowered their veils. The palace servants huddled together. The flow continued even after Sulan returned, unveiled, dead on the count of 50, the courtyard filling with Aiel. Quickly it became clear that she had spread the word the Kar Karn was in danger, the only way she felt she could gather enough spears in the time allotted. A little sour grumping passed among the men, but most decided it was a fine joke, some chuckling or rattling spears on bucklers. None left, though. They looked at the gateway and settled on their haunches to see what was happening. Ears sharpened with the power, Rand heard a maiden named Nandera, sinewy yet still handsome, despite more gray than yellow in her hair, whispered to Sulan, "You spoke to Garshain as Farder as mine." Sulan's blue eyes met Nandera's green levelly. "I did. We will deal with it when Randolph Thor is safe today." "When he is safe," Nandera agreed. Sulan chose out 20 maidens quickly, some who had been part of the guard that morning, and some not. But when Urian began picking red shields, men from other societies insisted they should be included. That city through the gateway looked a place where enemies might be found, and the Kar Karn must be protected. If the truth be told, no Aiel turned away from a possible fight, and the younger they were, the more likely to try to find one. Another argument almost started when Rand said the men could not number more than the maidens. That would dishonor Farder Mai, since he had given them his honor to carry. And the maidens not more than Sulan had already chosen. He truly was taking them where no battle skills could protect them, and everyone who came with him was one more he would have to watch out for. That he did not explain. No telling whose honor he would step on if he did. "Remember," he said once they were sorted out, "touch nothing. Take nothing, not even a sip of water. And stay in sight always. Don't go inside any building for any reason." Ammon and Kovril nodded vigorously, which seemed to impress the Aiel more than Rand's words, so long as they were impressed. They stepped through the gateway into a city long dead, a city more than dead. A golden sun, more than halfway to its zenith, roasted the ruins of greatness. Here and there a huge intact dome topped a pale marble palace, but more were whole than not, and most often only a curved and broken fragment remained. Long columned walks ran to towers as tall as anything Carian had ever dreamed of, and to towers ending jaggedly. Everywhere roofs had fallen in, bricks and stone fanned across fractured paving stones from collapsed buildings and walls. Shattered fountains and broken monuments decorated every intersection. Stunted trees, dying in the drought, dotted great hills of rubble. Dead weeds lined cracks in streets and buildings. Nothing moved, not a bird, not a rat, not a breeze. Silence shrouded Shadar Logoth. Shadar Logoth, where the shadow waits. Rand let the gateway vanish. No Aiel unveiled. The Ogier stared around, faces tight and ears laid stiffly back. Rand held on to Sayadin in that fight that Taim said told a man he was alive. Even if he had not been able to channel, maybe especially then, he would have wanted that reminder here. Aradhol had been a great capital in the days of the Trolloc Wars, an ally of Manetheren and the rest of the 10 Nations. When those wars had lasted long enough to dwarf the War of the 100 Years, when it seemed the shadow was everywhere victorious, and every victory of the light did no more than buy time, a man named Mordeth became a counselor in Aradhol. He counseled the rule that to win, To survive, Ardhull must be harder than the Shadow, more cruel than the Shadow, less trusting. Slowly they made it so, until in the end, Ardhull became, if not blacker than the Shadow, as black. With war still raging against the Trollocs, Ardhull finally turned in on itself, turned on itself, consumed itself. Something was left behind, something that had kept anyone from ever living here again. Not a pebble of this place, but was tainted with the hatred and suspicion that had murdered Ardhull and left Shadar Logoth. Not a pebble, but could infect with time. And more than the taint remained, though that was enough to keep any sane man away. Rand turned slowly where he stood, staring up at windows like empty eye sockets, the eyes gouged out. With the sun climbing high, he could feel unseen watchers. When he had been here before, that feeling had not come through this strongly until the sun began to go down. Much more than the taint remained. A Trolloc army had died camping here, vanished, except for messages smeared on walls in blood, begging the Dark One to save them. Night was no time to be in Shadar Logoth. This place frightens me, Lews Therin murmured beyond the void. Does it not frighten you? Rand's breath caught. Was the voice actually addressing him? Yes, it frightens me. There is darkness here. Blackness, blacker than black. If the Dark One chose to live among men, he would choose here. Yes, he would. I must kill Demandred. Rand blinked. Does Demandred have some connection to Shadar Logoth? To here? I remember at last killing Ishamael. There was a sense of wonder in the voice, but a new discovery. He deserved to die. Lanfear deserved to die too, but I am glad I wasn't to kill her. Was it just happenstance that the voice seemed to speak to him? Was Lews Therin hearing, answering? Did you kill Ishamael? Tell me how. Death. I want the rest of death. But not here. I do not want to die here. Rand sighed. Just happenstance. He would not want to die here either. A nearby palace, broken columns along its front, had a distinct lean toward the street. It could fall any time and bury them where they stood. Lead on, he told Hammond. To the Aiel, he added, remember what I said. Touch nothing, take nothing, and stay in sight.
I did not think it would be so bad,
Hammond muttered.
It almost washes the road away, Garrett.
Aerith moaned, and Kovra looked as though she would if she were not too dignified. Ogier were sensitive to the mood of the place. Hammond pointed. The sweater had nothing to do with the heat.
That way.
Broken pavement crunched beneath Rand's boots like bones grinding. Hammond directed them around corners and down streets, past one set of ruins after another. But his direction was sure. The encircling Aiel moved on their toes. Their eyes above the black veils did not look as if they expected attack, but as if the attack had already begun. The unseen watchers and broken buildings brought back memories Rand would as soon have avoided. Here man had begun a road that took him to the Horn of Valir, that almost killed him on the way. Maybe the road that had led him to Rhuidean, the Turan'Grial he did not want to talk about. Here Perrin had disappeared when they were all forced to flee in the night, and when Rand finally saw him again, far from here, he had golden eyes and a sad look and secrets that Moraine had never shared with Rand. He had not escaped unscathed himself, though Shadar Logoth had not touched him directly. Padan Fain had followed them all here, himself and Mat and Perrin, Moraine and Lannan, Nynaeve and Egwene. Padan Fain, peddler, a frequent visitor to the Two Rivers. Padan Fain, dark friend. More than dark friend now, and worse, so Moraine had said. Fane had followed them all here, but what left was more than Fane, or less. Fane, as much as he was still Fane, wanted Rand dead. He had threatened everyone Rand loved if Rand would not come to him. And Rand had not. Perrin had dealt with that, kept the Two Rivers safe, but White not hurt. What had Fane been doing with the White Cloaks? Would Pedro Nile be a dark friend? If Aes Sedai could be, then so could the Lord Captain Commander of the Children of the Light.
There it is,
Ammon said, and Rand gave a start. Shada Logoth was the last place on earth to lose yourself in thought. Where the elders stood had been a spacious square once, though a weathered mound of rubble filled one end now. In the middle of the square, where a fountain might have been, was instead an ornate filigree fence of some shiny metal, untouched by rust. That enclosed what appeared to be a tall with vines and leaves, so delicately done you would expect the breeze that was rippling them. But you were surprised to realize they were gray, not green.
No shit.
The Waygate, though it certainly looked like no kind of gate.
They cut down the grove as soon as the opiate departed for the study.
Hammond muttered angrily, long brows drawn down.
No more than 20 or 30 years, and extended the city.
Rand touched the fence with a flow of air, wondering how to get through, and blinked as the whole thing collapsed into 20 or more pieces, which fell with loud shivering clangs that made the Ogier jump. Rand shook his head. Of course. Metal that had survived so long without a spot of rust must be power-wrought, maybe even remnants from the Age of Legends. But the joins that had held them together had long since corroded, awaiting one good shove. Gogrel laid a hand on his shoulder.
I would ask you not to look at it. No doubt Boyle told you how. He always did show too much interest in that sort of thing, but the ways are dangerous. I can lock it, Hammond said, so it cannot be opened again without the talisman unrolling. A simple matter, simply done.
He did not seem eager, though. He certainly did not move any closer. It might have to be used without time for fetching anything, Rand told him. All the ways might have to be used, whatever the dangers. If he could cleanse them somehow, that was almost as grandiose as his boast to Taim that he would cleanse saidin. He began weaving saidin around the Waygate, using all 5 powers, even lifting the segments of fence back into place. From the first flow he channeled, the taint seemed to pulse inside him, a slow building vibration. It must have been the evil in Shada Logoth itself, a resonance of evil to evil. Even in the void he felt dizzy from those reverberations, as though the world swung beneath his feet in time to them. They made him want to vomit up everything he had ever eaten. Still he persevered. He could not send men to stand guard here any more than he could have had them search. What he wove, and then inverted, was a vicious sort of trap to suit a vicious place. A ward of surpassing nastiness. Humans could cross it unharmed, perhaps even the Forsaken. He could ward against humans or shadow spawn, not both. And even a male Forsaken could not detect it. Should any sort of shadow spawn pass through, that was the viciousness. They would not die right away. They might even live to make it beyond the city walls. Long enough for the dead to be far off, not here to frighten the next Myrddraal that came. Long enough for a Trolloc army to exit, perhaps, picking up their own deaths as they did. Cruel enough for a Trolloc. Making the thing sickened him as much as the taint on saidin. Tying off the weed and loosing saidin brought only some relief. The residue of filth that always seemed to remain behind still throbbed. It almost felt as though the ground were throbbing beneath his boots. His teeth and ears ached. He could not wait to get away from here. Taking a deep breath, he prepared to channel again to open the gateway, and stopped frowning. Quickly, he counted everyone, then did it again, more slowly. Somebody's missing. Who? The Aiel took only a moment to confer. Liar, Sulan said through her veil. She was right behind me. There was no mistaking Jelani's voice. Maybe she saw something. He thought that was Desor. I told everyone to stay together. Rage washed across the void, waves breaking to froth on a boulder. One of them missing, here. And they took it with that light-blasted Aiel coolness. A maiden missing, a woman missing in Shadar Logoth. When I find her... Inch by inch, he fought down the fury that threatened to engulf the emptiness around him. What he wanted to do to Lyra was shout at her till she fainted, send her to Soralea for the rest of her life. That rage wanted white-hot murder. Split up in pairs. Shout. Look everywhere, but don't go inside. Not for any reason. And stay out of shadows. You can die here before you know it. You can all die before any of you know it. If you see her in a building, even if she looks just fine, find me, unless she comes out to you. We can search faster if we each search alone, Urian said, and Sulan nodded agreement. There were far too many nods. Pairs! And fought the fury down again. The light burn Aiel's stubbornness. At least that way you have somebody to watch your back. For once, do what I say when I say it. I've been here. I know a little about this place. A few minutes later, most spent in argument over how many should stay with Rand, 20 pairs of Aiel scattered. The one remaining was Jelani, Rand thought, though it was hard to tell.
Hell yeah, fire.
For once, she did not appear to be happy guarding him. The green eyes held a decided touch of sullenness.
I suppose we could make another pair,
Hammond said, looking at Cobra. She nodded.
and Aerith can remain here.
Rand and Aerith said almost at the same instant. The older Ogier turned with faces of grave disapproval. Aerith's ears sagged until they looked ready to fall off. Rand grabbed hold of his temper firmly. Once it had seemed that in the void, any anger was off in the far distance somewhere, attached to him by no more than a thread. More and more it threatened to overwhelm him, to overwhelm the void, which might be disastrous. Aside from that, though, I'm sorry. I had no business shouting at you, Elder Hammond, or you, Speaker Cobra. Was that the right way to say it? Was it even a title of that sort? Nothing in their expressions said either way. I would appreciate it if you would all stay with me. Then we can all search together.
Of course.
Hammond said.
I really don't see how I can offer you more protection than you can offer yourself. But it is yours.
Gavril and Aerith both nodded approvingly. Rand had no idea what Hammond was talking about, but it did not seem the time to ask, with the three of them apparently bucked up to protect him. He had no doubt he could safeguard all three as long as they kept close. So long as you follow your own rules, Randall Thor. The green-eyed maiden was indeed Jelani, sounding heartened that she would not have to stand and wait. Rand hoped he had given the others a better idea of what this place was like. From the beginning, the search was frustrating. They walked up and down the streets, watched by invisible eyes, sometimes climbing over strewn rubble, taking turns calling Lyra, Lyra. Gavriel's shouts made leaning walls creak. Ammons made them groan ominously. Nothing answered. The only other sounds were the shouts of the search parties. The sun had gone when Jelani said, she would have gone this far, Randall Thor. Not unless she was trying to get away from us, and she would not do that. Rand turned from peering through shadowed columns at the head of the wide stone steps, trying to see into a great chamber beyond. As far as he could make out, there was nothing in there but dust. No footprints. The unseen watchers. They were not gone, even now, but almost. We have to search as much as we can. Maybe she... He did not know how to finish. I won't leave her here, Jelani. The sun swung higher and began to descend. He was standing atop what had been a palace once, maybe a whole block of buildings. It was a hill now, weathered enough over the years that only the number of broken stones sticking out of the dry soil said it had been anything else. Gloria! He shouted through cupped hands. Gloria! Hand off Thor. On the street below, lowering her veil so he could see it was Susan. She and another maiden, still veiled, stood with Jelani and the Ogier. Come down. He scrambled down in a cloud of dust and a shower of bits of brick and stone, moving so fast he nearly fell twice. You found her? Sulan shook her head. We should have by now if she is alive. She would have not gone far on her own. If anyone carried her far, they carried her dead, I think. She would not go easily. And if she was injured too badly to answer our shouts, I think that also must mean she is dead. Hammond sighed sadly. The Ogier women's long eyebrows dropped to their cheekbones. For some reason, their sad, pitying looks were directed at Rand. Keep looking, he said. May we look inside the buildings? There are many rooms we cannot see from outside. Rand hesitated, well short of mid-afternoon yet, and he could feel the eyes again. As strong as they had been with the sun setting his first time here. Shadows were not safe in Shadar Logoth. No, but we keep looking. He was not sure how long he went on shouting his way up one street and down the next, but after a time, Urien and Sulan stepped in front of him, both unveiled. The sun sat at the treetops to the west, a blood-red ball in a cloudless sky. Shadows stretched long across the ruins. I will search as long as you wish, Urien said, but calling and looking have done what they can. If we could search the buildings... No. It came out a croak, and Rand cleared his throat. Light, but he wanted to drink of water. The invisible watchers filled every window, every opening. Thousands of them, waiting, anticipating. And shadows cloaked the city. Shadows were not safe in Shadar Logoth, but darkness brought out death. Mashadar rose with sunset. Sulan, He could not make himself say they had to give up, leave Lia behind, whether she was dead or alive, maybe lying somewhere unconscious, behind a wall or under a heap of bricks that might have tumbled down on her. She could be. Whatever watches us is waiting for nightfall, I think, Sulan said. I have looked into windows where something was looking back at me, but there was nothing there. Dancing the spears with something we cannot see will not be easy. Rand realized he wanted her to say again that Lia must be dead, but they could go. Lia could be injured somewhere. It was possible.
Hell yeah, fire.
He touched his coat pocket. The fat little man Hungryall was back in Caemlyn with his sword and the scepter.
That's the way to do it.
He was not sure he could protect everyone once night fell. Moraine thought the whole White Tower could not kill Mashadar, if it could be said to be alive. Hammond cleared his throat.
From what I remember, Arnold,
He said, frowning.
of Shadar headquarters, when the sun goes down, we will probably all die.
Yes, Rand breathed the word reluctantly. Lia may be alive. All the others? Covril and Aerith had their heads together a little way off. He caught a murmur of loyal. Beauty is heavier than a mountain, death lighter than a feather. Lews Therin had to have that from him. Memories passed both ways across that barrier, it seemed, but it cut to the heart. We have to go now, he told them, whether Lia is alive or dead. Must go. Urien and Sulan only nodded, but Aerith moved closer and patted him on the shoulder with surprising gentleness for a hand that could have gripped his head.
If I might trouble you,
Hammond said.
we have been rather longer than we expected.
He gestured to the sinking sun.
If you would do us the favor of carrying us outside the city, In the same way you brought us here, I would appreciate it greatly.
Rand remembered the forest outside Shadow Logan. No Murdrol or Trollocs there this time, but a thick wood. The light alone knew how far to the nearest village, or in what direction. I will do better than that, he said. I can take you straight to the Two Rivers as quickly. The two older Ogier nodded gravely.
The blessing of the light and stillness be on you for your help,
Gabriel murmured. Aerith's ears quivered with anticipation, perhaps equally foreseeing Loyal and leaving Shadow Logan. Rand hesitated a moment. Loyal would probably be in Emond's Field, but he could not take them there. Too much chance news of his visit would slip out of the Two Rivers. Away from the village, then, far enough to avoid the farms that clustered close nearby. The vertical slash of light appeared and widened. The taint pounded inside him again, worse than before. The ground seemed to beat at the soles of his boots. Half a dozen Aiel leaped through, and the three Ogier followed with a haste that was not at all unseemly in the circumstances. Rand paused, looking back over the ruined city. He had promised to let the maidens die for him. As the last of the Aiel went through,
You're already out fire.
and he glanced at her. But she was looking at his hand.
Our weather's been a little cooler.
Had sliced a gash that oozed blood.
No longer in the triple digits, so that's always good.
To someone else. The physical mark did not matter. It would heal. He had made deeper inside, where no one could see. One for each maiden who died. And he never let them heal. We are done here, he said, and stepped through the gateway into the Two Rivers. The throbbing vanished with the gateway. Frowning, Rand tried to orient himself. Placing a gateway precisely was not easy.
Hell yeah.
He had never been before. But he had picked the field he did know. A weedy meadow, a good 2-hour walk south of
Our leaves ain't changing for us this yet. We're just getting a lot more effects from tornadoes around us. So we're getting that type of weather.
Rand did not need the power in him to tell the boy was goggling, as well he might. Dropping the crook, he set off running for a farmhouse that had not been there when Rand was last here. A tile-roofed farmhouse. For a moment, Rand wondered whether he was really in the Two Rivers at all. No, the feel of the place told him he was. The smell of the air shouted home. All those changes Bode and the rest of the girls had told him about, they had not really sunk in. Nothing ever really changed in the Two Rivers. Should he send the girls back here, back home? What you should do is stay clear of them. It was an irritable thought. Emond's Field is that way, he said. Emond's Field. Tem might be there too, but the Wine Spring Inn with the Gwain's parents. That is where Loyal should be. I don't know if you can make it before dark. You might ask at the farmhouse. I'm sure they will give you a place to sleep. Don't tell them about me. Tell no one how you came. The boy had seen, but a boy's tale might be taken for exaggeration when Ogier appeared. Adjusting the bundles on their backs, Hammond and Cover exchanged looks, and she said,
We will say nothing of how we came. Let people make the stories they wish.
Hammond stroked his beard and cleared his throat.
You must not kill your son.
The boy ran with startled. What?
The road ahead of you,
Hammond rumbled,
is long, dark, and I very much fear bloodstained. I also very much fear that you will take us all down that road. But you must live to reach the end of it.
I will, Rand replied curtly. Fare you well. He tried to put some warmth into that, some feeling, but he was not sure he succeeded.
Fare you well,
Hammond said. And the women echoed it before all three turned toward the farmhouse. Not even Aerith sounded as if she believed he would, though. A moment longer Rand stood there. People had appeared outside the house, watching the Ogier approach. but Rand stared north and west, not toward Emmons Field, but toward the farm where he had grown up. When he turned away and opened the gateway to Camelin, it was like tearing his own arm off. The pain was a much more suitable memorial for Laya than its scratch. Chapter 22. Heading south. The 5 stones made a smoothly spinning circle above Matt's hands, one red, one blue, one clear green, the others striped in interesting ways. He rode on, got...
Alright, everyone. Probably gonna call it into this live for tonight. I want to thank everyone for stopping by and everyone who keeps coming back and chilling with me. Definitely appreciate all y'all's support. Until next time, everyone. Y'all stay safe out there.